Just a few years ago, Russell Wilson was the man in Seattle. He led them to multiple Super Bowls, made 9 Pro Bowls, and was loved by the entire fan base. He had an incredible deep ball, could make scrambling plays out of nowhere, and would always come back to win in the fourth quarter. But he wasn't just a great quarterback. He was a great story. Drafted in the 3rd round to beat out 2 veteran quarterbacks for the starting job in his first season, and then in his second season to lead the team to the Super Bowl and win, it was completely unheard of. In the 2020 season, he started 8-0 and threw 28 touchdowns. He was the favorite for MVP. And then just 3 seasons later, he was benched. How does this happen? How does an elite top 5 quarterback go to garbage so quickly? And most importantly, did Russell Wilson ruin a Hall of Fame career? Russell Wilson's path to the NFL didn't begin with hype. It began with doubt. He started his college career at NC State, where he became one of the most efficient quarterbacks in school history. He threw for over 9,000 yards and 76 touchdowns in just 3 seasons, and quickly established himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. But after a conflict with the NC State's coaching staff, he switched to Wisconsin. Here he had his best year yet, throwing for 33 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions. But NFL scouts still doubted him. The problem wasn't his performance, it was his height. He stood at just 5'11", far shorter than a traditional NFL quarterback. Teams believed shorter quarterbacks couldn't see over defensive linemen or succeed long-term in the league. But boy, were they wrong. In just his first year, he beat out 2 veteran QBs for the starting job, and in his second year, led the team to the Super Bowl. He was the youngest, the shortest, the least experienced, but he was an absolute stud. Through his first 8 seasons, he went 75, 36, and 1, with 8 Pro Bowls, throwing for 227 touchdowns, while putting up a 101.2 passer rating. He never had a losing season, and by 2020, he had 30-plus game-winning drives. But that's when it started to take a turn. Through the first 8 games of 2020, he had 28 touchdowns and was 8-0. But the final 8 games, he only had 12 touchdowns and 5 interceptions. With multiple 3-turnover games, the offense was stalling, and they lost in the wildcard round. At the time, this didn't seem too severe, but looking back, this was when it all started. The next season in 2021 went normal for the first 5 weeks. But then, in week 5, everything changed. For nearly a decade, Wilson had been indestructible. He never got hurt, and he never missed playing time. But on October 7th, 2021, that changed. It was a Thursday night game against the Rams, and Aaron Donald reached out to block a pass. Donald's hand slammed directly into Wilson's throwing hand. Wilson reacted immediately. He grabbed his hand and shook it. Something was clearly wrong. When the cameras zoomed in, the damage was clear. His middle finger in his throwing hand was severely dislocated. It was bent in a way fingers aren't supposed to bend. He walked to the sideline and moments later ran off the field into the locker room. Wilson had broke his 149-game streak. But more importantly, he would never be able to throw a football in the same way ever again. He came back after 4 weeks, but something was different. His grip strength wasn't the same, his accuracy wasn't the same, and his deep ball wasn't the same. He was not the same quarterback he was before injury. And it was that offseason when the Seahawks decided to make a move. The Broncos offered to take care of Wilson's contract and send over 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, along with Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and Shelby Harris. This was an offer that Seattle didn't want to pass up. But funny enough, Wilson didn't want to pass up on it either. You see, Wilson had a no-trade clause. He could have chosen to stay in Seattle. Pete Carroll wanted him to stay in Seattle. This was his home. This is where he had made it to 9 Pro Bowls and 2 Super Bowls. He understood the system. He knew the coaching staff. He knew the wide receivers. Everything was normal. Everything was comfortable. But he decided to gamble it all away to play for the Broncos because he thought they were a winning organization. This was an absolute gamble for Russ. And this is the gamble that many fans believe torched Russell Wilson's chance at being a Hall of Famer. When Wilson arrived at Denver, there were high expectations. This was a team believed to be a good quarterback away from making the Super Bowl. They had a top 5 defense and a promising young offense, with Patrick Surtain, Justin Simmons, and Bradley Chubb on the defensive side, and Courtland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, and Javonte Williams on the offensive side, alongside a top 10 offensive line. They thought surely, with Pro Bowler Russell Wilson, we'll be able to make the playoffs, and maybe even a Super Bowl. The Broncos front office really believed in Russell Wilson, and to prove it, they gave him a $250 million extension, which they didn't have to do because he already had 2 years left on his contract from Seattle. They could have just kept the 2 years, seen how he did, and then extended him, or even kept him 1 year, see how he did, and then extended him. But without seeing him play, they gave him a $250 million 5-year contract extension. While this seems crazy now, it really wasn't that crazy at the time. Russell Wilson was a great quarterback, and he was going to lead them to a Super Bowl. This was going to be their next Peyton Manning. But what really happened was shocking. Russell Wilson had the worst year he had ever had in his career. The team went 4-11. He only threw 16 touchdowns, had an 84 passer rating, which was a career low for him, had a 36 QBR, finished 27th in passer rating, 29th in QBR, and 30th in touchdowns. He performed like a bottom 5 starting quarterback. While their defense was top 3 in the league, their offense was the worst in the entire NFL. They did better the season before when they had Teddy Bridgewater and Drew Lock. This was absolutely devastating for Broncos fans. And the question remains, why did this happen? The answer is actually pretty simple. Russell Wilson lost all of his mobility. He was old. He was in his mid-30s. He couldn't escape the pocket the same way he used to. But he wasn't used to doing anything else. So he would try to escape the pocket and get sacked. Even under a top 10 offensive line, he had one of the highest sack rates per game. He tried to play the way he was used to, escaping the pocket, making magic, throwing deep balls. But his accuracy wasn't the same. He had been injured. His speed wasn't the same. He was old, and he was degrading at a rapid rate. The following season was a little bit better. They went 7-8. He threw 26 touchdowns and had a 50 QBR. But all of that is really just middle of the pack in the NFL. They didn't make the playoffs. They didn't even have a winning record. Russell Wilson was not the answer to their problems. He was their problem. They realized that they needed to cut him, and in order to cut him without having to pay him more money if he got injured, they benched him. This is when Wilson really started circling the drain. After he was cut, he started the 2024 regular season with the Steelers, but he started injured. After playing only 11 games late in the season, finishing 6-5, and throwing only 16 touchdowns, he was still getting sacked at a very high rate. And even though he was playing better, he wasn't playing well. His value as a quarterback was completely gone. He couldn't offer anything he was able to offer earlier in his career, and he wasn't a light for any team. No team thought, oh yeah, we'll get Russell Wilson and that'll improve our chances. No. He started the first 3 games for the New York Giants in the 2025 regular season, and he was awful. He had a 27 QBR and went 0-3. Rookie Jackson Dart proceeded to take the same role as Wilson for the rest of the season, and he did great, proving that Wilson wasn't just on a bad team, he was just bad. Wilson is now 4 years into his gamble that he started in 2021. The question is, will he continue to try to revive his career, or will he call it quits? Russell Wilson gambled away the Seahawks to play in Denver for what he said would be multiple Super Bowls and 10 to 12 more years of solid play. Wilson was hoping for the big winner. But did he lose it all? Did he lose his Hall of Fame induction? Since 1970, there have only been 17 Hall of Fame quarterbacks. These are quarterbacks such as Tom Brady, Kurt Warner, Peyton Manning, Johnny Unitas, and Brett Favre. And while most of the quarterbacks on this list had over 15 years of great play, there were quite a few that didn't, specifically Kurt Warner, who was inducted in 2017. Kurt Warner had an amazing story, coming into the NFL late in his football career and winning an MVP and a Super Bowl. But he only played 12 seasons. And out of those 12 seasons, he only started 5 full seasons. He is perfect proof that you don't need a long career to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. Out of the 17 Hall of Fame quarterbacks since 1970, there is not a single one that has had such a sharp and punishing decline as Russell Wilson. It's hard to think of Russell Wilson as a Hall of Fame quarterback when you think about these last few years. And the last few years are how you're remembered. John Elway went out on top. Tom Brady went out on top. Russell Wilson is squirming in the mud. Kurt Warner is proof that Russell Wilson, if he ended his career in 2022, would have been a Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, 9-time Pro Bowler, elite passer, scrambler, face of the 2010 Seahawks. But instead of using his no-trade clause and staying with the Seahawks, or instead of hanging him up when he had an awful season, he decided to keep circling the drain and keep playing himself out of the Hall of Fame. However, it's not over yet. Strangely enough, there is a Hall of Fame quarterback who played himself out of the Hall of Fame. The difference between him and Russell Wilson is he ended up finishing his career well. He played for a few seasons and was great. Then he got injured, just like Russell Wilson, and was benched by multiple teams. However, after 3 teams, he finally got his starting job back and went to the Super Bowl, winning himself back into the Hall of Fame. Who is this quarterback? He's already been mentioned. It's Kurt Warner. Russell Wilson may have played himself out of the Hall of Fame, but he can play himself back into the Hall of Fame. Is it likely? I don't think so. I think Russell Wilson is done. But it has been done before, and it could be done again.